3 years on YouTube. Who would have thunk it? Well, not me anyway. But here we are, 3 years down the line, and I'm going to nail down for you the one game to rule them all. Well, my one game to rule them all, as well as a host of other people's. So if you're interested in seeing not only mine, but about 20 other one games to rule them all, you just wait until after these. Now for my one game to rule them all, and if you've followed the channel over the past 3 years or even just the past 3 weeks, you probably already know that my favourite game of all time is this. Yes, this is my favourite game of all time. I can't separate them. Suikoden 2, Final Fantasy 7, I love them both equally. I think they're both the greatest games of all time. But this is about the one game to rule them all. But I'm not going to do this alone, as I said in the introduction. I've got some help from some other people, so let's get this started, and we will kick off with a couple of nerds.
Hey, it's your boy Fresh.
And I'm Mary, and we are a couple of nerds. And for Generation Pixel's 3-year anniversary for his channel, he asked us to name our one game to rule them all. And for couples, we each need to pick our own.
That's right. So when I was thinking, he didn't really tell us what that meant. So I think I was supposed to be open for interpretation. So when I was picking my one game to rule them all, I knew it had to have RPG elements. So leveling up your character, finding better equipment, and heavy on story. Had to have cooperative. So I love cooperative games. Had to have horror, because I love horror games. And stick with me on this, a little bit of shoot 'em up.
Mm-hmm. Or like knife 'em up?
Just let me do my thing. So I chose my one game to rule them all. Need to have all those, so I picked Diablo 3. Now the shoot 'em up is very, very weak, but you do have to dodge projectiles, and there are a couple characters. I know the archer was one. They're constantly shooting.
Yeah, and when you get into like a skirmish with a bunch of monsters all at once, I mean, you're button smashing.
Yeah, you're button smashing, you're dodging, so the shoot 'em up is probably weak in here, but I couldn't really find a game that hit all 4 of those. But it's cooperative. It's the game me and Mary played when she was pregnant with our daughter Grace. Mm-hmm. So I have very, very fond memories. So if I had to throw all the rest of the collection away, only keep one game, it would probably be this one. It's got a great story too, and demons. It's scary. Demons are super scary.
And a little bit of competition when we're fighting over the legendary.
That's right.
So for me, my one game to rule them all is Super Mario World. Because I thought a little bit about this, Super Mario 3 kind of got me interested because I loved the idea of having like little secrets in the game that you had to figure out in order to go to like secret levels or find
get whistles and special items.
But I felt like this game really perfected that. So did it a little bit better than Super Mario 3. And also, of course, Yoshi, which I absolutely love Yoshi. And I like the side scroller, so it's an easier game, but it's still challenging, so it's not like you never die, you do still die. Right. So it's got like that classic you can still die.
Right.
And it and also it's huge. So I feel like it's got all the elements that you could want. I mean, really, it's like an RPG. I mean, you're playing Mario, right? And you're fighting the bad guys.
A little weak on story.
I think it's a great story. And
Princess gets captured a lot.
It's huge. Like the levels just keep going and going and going, and you keep exploring. And then there's like caves and I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. I think it's a very diverse game.
Yeah, you get to find all the branching paths, all the hidden, like all the ghost castles. I think have 2 different ways to beat them, or a lot of them do. I think you're right. It took what Mario 3 did great and made it better, but still kept that same spirit, whereas the next game, Super Mario 64, took it in a 3D direction.
And I can't do that. I want a side scroller.
I like side scrollers. I like side scrollers too. So, well, Generation Pixel, from both of us to you, happy anniversary. Thank you for allowing us to be a part, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
What's up, GP Nation? Happy 3 years to Generation Pixel. I was asked, what is that one game that ruled them all? And for me, well, it's technically 3 games, I guess, but it definitely ruled not only me, but millions of kids across the world. I'm talking about Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. This was one phenomenon that completely overtook my childhood. This bag right here is nothing but Pokemon figures. This book right here is nothing but Pokemon cards. And of course, I have every single episode on DVD. So for me, when I was a kid, Pokemon completely ruled my life. It was getting banned in the schoolyard as kids were getting into fistfights over Pokemon cards, battling each other in Pokemon. It was everywhere. And for me, it was a combination of everything that I loved. JRPGs, collecting, and this incredible world that sucked me away into this amazing game. And so for me, the one game that ruled them all will forever be Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. And hey, it is the 3rd best-selling video game franchise, only behind Mario and Tetris. So I think that's a pretty good answer for which video game ruled them all.
Chris from Mako Powered here, and it's Generation Pixel's 3-year anniversary on YouTube. To celebrate, a bunch of us have been asked what we consider to be the one game to rule them all. If you know me, you know that my pick is, and always has to be, Metal Gear Solid for the PS1. While it may seem obvious, let me explain why it's my choice, especially considering later games in the series honed a lot of the elements which showed up here. First, there's the fact that it changed what mature meant for a video game. Up to this point, most so-called mature games were just a 14-year-old edgelord's idea of mature, gratuitous violence and hypersexualization of women. While MGS does have some of that hypersexualization of women going, Sniper Wolf's outfit is absolutely going to keep her warm in the middle of an Alaskan winter, right? The women are still treated like fleshed-out characters in their own right, something not every subsequent game in the series can claim. From Sniper Wolf's escape from the horrors of genocide and her dynamic with Otacon, to Meryl confronting the unquestioning pro-militarism of her upbringing, to Naomi's ties to the earlier games in the series, these characters are real characters, and not just placeholders or eye candy. Also, sure, MGS is a violent game, it is an incredibly violent game, but that violence is in service of something greater. In order to talk about it though, we need to discuss the ways in which the game breaks the fourth wall. Metal Gear Solid was a revelation in the ways that it incorporated the PlayStation hardware, not to mention the physical case the game came in order to blur the lines between the on-screen action and the real world. Psycho Mantis reading your mind, or memory card, and moving your controller telekinetically, using the DualShock Rumble, Meryl's radio frequency literally being printed on the back of the game's case, and the in-game characters telling you to look there for it, the game was playing with the player as much as the player was playing with the game. Here's the thing though, these more bombastic efforts prime the player for the real fourth wall break at the end of the game. See, BioShock may have thrown players for a loop with Would You Kindly, but MGS did it first, and arguably better. The first time the player snaps an enemy's neck, There isn't an over-the-top zoom-in or flashy kill graphic or anything. Instead, the player feels the snap through the dual shock, the body goes limp, and just drops to the ground. The player has just ended a life, and it isn't glorified. When Liquid berates Snake for enjoying the events of the game, including killing his comrades, he is actually berating the player and inviting them to question why they find the gameplay on offer enjoyable. This is more than just, haha, you followed orders and we tricked you. This is, why do we find playing war so much fun? The intent is to make the player question not just their enjoyment of MGS, but their enjoyment of any military-themed game. This is what I mean when I talk about the game's maturity. In an era of boomer shooters, gratuitous gore, and video game magazine writers and editors proudly proclaiming how psycho they are, MGS offered an overtly political experience, not to mention an educational one. For example, how many gamers of a certain age first learned about the details of the black market nuclear material trade from this game? Or what DARPA, a real-world organization, is? The thing is, as of the game's release, those details were accurate. Sure, this carries forward to later games in the series, but this was the game which properly ushered it in. Finally, it doesn't overstay its welcome. I think it's fair to say that later games in the series got, let's be nice and call it a touch bloated. Why, hello there, Guns of the Patriots. MGS has a snappy pace which makes even an initial playthrough feel like just the right length. Yes, the dialogue gets long-winded and heavy-handed sometimes. That's unavoidable with Kojima. Even with that, the pace and the flow of the game feel just right. In fact, everything about the game feels just right, making it my one game to rule them all.
Yes, sir. The entire unit was wiped out. Those two are still alive. The Vector? Yes, sir. Fox Dive should become activated soon. Right on schedule. Yes, sir. I recovered all of Rex's dummy warhead data. No, sir. My cover is intact. Nobody knows who I really am. Yes, the DARPA chief knew my identity, but he's been disposed of. Yes, the inferior one was the winner after all. That's right. Until the very end, Liquid thought he was the inferior one. Yes, sir, I agree completely. It takes a well-balanced individual such as yourself to rule the world. No, sir. No one knows that you were the third one, Solidus. What should I do about the woman? Yes, sir. I'll keep her under surveillance. Yes. Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Generation Pixels channel. Thanks very much for asking me to take part in this little collab you're doing for your channel's birthday party. And he's picked us, a few of us, to pick out one game to rule them all. So the game I'm going to pick, if anybody watches any of my stuff, they'll know that I'm not heavy into retro. Like I like retro, but I'm of the opinion that gaming has got better and better and better as we've evolved, basically. So the one game that rules them all for me, it's a 2018 game, and that is God of War on the PS4. Absolutely banging game, absolutely fantastic. Also a shout out to God of War Ragnarok, because I think they both complement each other superbly, like absolutely fantastic. And the reason why I think this game rules them all is because obviously the source material of God of War was originally on the PS2, and those were all kind of like hack and slash games and everything, like just balls crazy, like big bosses and everything like that. But then with God of War in 2018, they really tamed down Kratos. He's a dad, and just the way that they managed to flip that story and make it a more emotional, involved story was fantastic. There's loads of reasons I think that's the best game, best game of all time. I think it is my favourite game of all time. It's because it has everything. It's got amazing soundtrack, graphics are phenomenal, the performances of Atreus and Kratos and Mimir and Balder, Odin and Ragnarok, absolutely fantastic. Brock and Sindri as well. Oh, the game is just phenomenal, like, and I don't think it will be topped in a while. I really think it's that good. There's a lot of games I could have picked. Being a Sony pony, I could have picked a lot of PS2, PS3, PS4 kind of games in that era. There's The Last of Us, Uncharted. There's just so many. But the one game that rules them all for me is God of War. Cheers, Pixel.
Alright, I've been asked to select one game from my collection to rule them all, and although I don't really know what that means, you probably know by now that we're going to go with Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu. If you've been paying attention to my program for any length of time, you know I'm an absolute crusader for this game. Yes, we could have selected one of the Mario Brothers games, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, the Final Fantasies, but by far, this is the one that I find myself revisiting more than any of the others.
Thanks so much for having us, Generation Pixel. Tom and Lacey of Do You Nerd here, and my one game to rule them all. Obviously, it's Guardians of I'm kidding, of course. He loves those games. Okay, let's talk Zelda: Link to the Past. It's often my go-to game for so many reasons. Audibly, visually, this game still looks amazing. This game still plays amazing. Not to mention, though I had played the NES Zelda games, the story, the characterization that came out of this one, this is what got me into the Zelda franchise. This is the game that made me a fan. And in all honesty, if there were ever a game that I wanted to kind of throw on in between games, I don't really know what to play next, I can go back to Link to the Past absolutely any time. So, Zelda, Link to the Past, my one game to rule them all. It's precious.
Well, for me, the one game to rule them all, like he said, I kind of talk about it, usually is my go-to game, is The Sims. Not necessarily Sims 3, but The Sims. I started playing it on the PC back when it very first came out. It is my game to just kind of throw and lose some time in. I love to play all the different expansion packs. I like playing them on the consoles, on the computer, it doesn't matter. It's a fun game that you can just kind of like see how far you can get that family tree going and how many generations of kids can you have and stuff like that. So I always like this game because I feel like it has ultimate unlimited playability, and it's just a fun game to either be nice or be vengeful and, you know, maybe put someone in a swimming pool and take the ladder out.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Or lock someone in a room with all their dirty dishes.
Now I don't know what you're talking about.
No.
So, all right, the one game to rule them all from both of us here at Do You Nerd: Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past.
The Sims.
Bye, nerdlings.
Bye-bye, nerdlings.
Okay, so this is the first time I broke into this particular segment of the video, just to put a little warning in there. You see, Zen bloke like me is Scottish, and being Scottish, we like to talk and talk and talk, and Zen bloke is absolutely no exception to that one bit. But I like to edit and edit and edit, so for your viewing pleasure, you're not getting the full 5 hours that Zen bloke sent me, just the bits that were important. So take it away, Zen bloke.
Hello! So, Generation Pixels asked me, and some other YouTubers of course, to answer the question, what's the one game to rule them all and in the darkness bind them? And I've been giving this some deep consideration. There's a number of games I've played across my gaming history. I mean, given I started on the Commodore 16 when I was but a lad. And I've been trying to throw as many concepts into the pot at one time. I have thought of progression, so how a game and a series of games, importantly in this particular case, has progressed.
A few moments later.
When some people would say it reached its zenith, or zenith, depending on your point of view.
20 minutes later.
Its cultural impact, which is important to me because I'm a gaming culture YouTuber.
2 hours later.
How it's impacted gaming as a whole in systems and storyline, in mechanics, in gameplay, in
Many months later.
how they actually make a complete and compelling experience.
Eventually.
But that aside, San Andreas is a god tier game. Always has been, always will be.
The next day.
I'll close this video in saying a number of things. One, first of all, Generation Pixel, thank you very much for including me in this collab. It's been fun. And I will close this video in the manner that I close all my videos upon my channel, where I hope to see you very soon. Hashtag support Scottish YouTubers, and of course, as always, nae bother.
Hey everyone, this is David the Lame Dad. Now, Sue had asked me if there was one game to rule them all, what would it be? And it's easy, Stu. It's going to be Final Fantasy VIII. No, I'm just teasing. He hates that game, but I gotta give him a hard time about it, as we always go back and forth. But one game to rule them all has to be Ocarina of Time. It's a game that, for being over 20 years old, still holds up so well. I don't know how well the game plays on the Nintendo Switch because I haven't played that yet, but I can say that playing it on the N64 today still feels as flawless and amazing as it ever did. This game truly does stand up to the test of time and is an absolute masterpiece still to this day. Thanks, Stu. I appreciate you. Back to you.
Oh! Now, when it comes to one game which rules them all, it was a simple answer to Generation Pixel, and it's Final Fantasy. So when it comes to the one game which will rule them all, now usually I would have said to Final Fantasy VII. However, I played a game in full this year which has taken that spot. Now that game is Nier Automata, the flawless action JRPG from Platinum Games and published by Square Enix. Now, if you've never played Nier Automata, let me tell you why it is the one game to rule them all. Now, in this game, we follow three androids by the names of 2B, 9S, and A2. We follow them in an endless battle against robot kind, where you are fighting on the behalf of the remaining humans which are on a bunker on the moon. This fast-paced, action-based combat game has got the signature Platinum combat. It is fast, it is slick, and it makes you feel utterly amazing when you are able to nail this combat. There is a desolate world to explore here, the ruins of mankind, and taking down as many robots as you can. But what makes this the game which rules them all is the story. Now, the story in this is one that has grabbed me and is still with me to this day. This game has multiple endings from pretty much A to Z. There is some comical endings here, and there are some very meaningful and deep endings in this. This game is begged to be replayed multiple times because once you complete your first playthrough, when you go back into your next game, you play as a completely different character from a different perspective. And this which drags you in is the story, seeing it from all different perspectives. And when I got even further, this game went from 0 to 60 in a second flat. And this was when I already thought the story was stellar from the beginning, and it just threw even more at you. You will love the characters in 2B, 9S and A2, and the world which is full of lore and its connections to its previous games. Now, it's not really needed to play the previous games, but having that understanding will help your appreciation for the game even more. The game does also have a stellar soundtrack which needs to be listened to absolutely everyone. The theme song, Weight of the World, which you've been listening to in the background, is one of the key pieces from the game, and I will listen to this song over and over and over again. Nier Automata is the one game to rule them all, and it can be yours on PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, PC and on Xbox. I played it on the Nintendo Switch and it was a breathtaking experience. But what I want to know is, have you played Nier Automata, and would you agree with my sentiments here? Let myself and Generation Pixel know in the comments down below. And on a side note, thank you once again for Generation Pixel for having me on, and congratulations for his channel on hitting that 3-year mark. Your support has been fantastic for my channel, and I hope to give you the same support for the oncoming future. This has been Chicken Fillets, and until next time, tatty bye.
It begins with the forging of great games. 2 starred the free man who promised he would one day return. And 5 games were gifted to us from Atlas, who above all else desire power over the hearts of man. For within these games was bound the strength and will to govern our immortal souls. 8 games steeped themselves in a world of horror, veering between outright terror and gory epic adventure as they struggled to balance themselves. In time, over 16 came from the lands of fantasy, who promised one epic final adventure after another, delving deeper into the depths with each new conquest. Behind them came another epic series, stealing the stars and storylines from the lords of Disney, which would have stood high above all others had it not been polluted by unintelligible handheld spin-offs. The plumber, the hero, and the bounty hunter rushed forth from the pits of Nintendo. In response, Sega birthed a hedgehog, fastest, coolest, and bluest of all things. But they were all of them deceived. Another game was made. A game that everybody overlooks because they think its sequel is better, or the sequel to that game's sequel, or even the very next video game series that followed the series that this game birthed. Everybody thinks that those games are better, and they may be. But without this one singular game, none of them would exist. In the land of California, in the blazing heat beneath the Santa Monica sun, the Dark Lady, Amy Hennig, was finally given full autonomy as creative director and writer at Naughty Dog Studios. She had already proven her worth at Crystal Dynamics, overseeing the epic vampire saga of Cain and Raziel, games that you definitely should not overlook. Before moving on to new studios to seek new challenges, Naughty Dog had been on a journey. They had begun right at the birth of the PlayStation console series with Crash Bandicoot, and shown out of the gate that they had programming and gameplay down to a T. And over these 2 console generations, they had been on a journey of improving the writing, the directing, the pacing of their games, and it all culminated in Uncharted. This series birthed Naughty Dog onto the PlayStation 3 and the next generation of consoles. It was a step change like no other step change in video game history. The gameplay was tight, the storytelling was epic, the cutscenes were motion captured with the actual actors giving us wonderful performances and inventing characters who'll be with us for the next decade and a half. This game literally developed entirely new ways of combining storytelling and gameplay and making a seamless, fun, exciting template for a series that, yes, the sequel improved and iterated upon. And yes, the 4th game is hailed as one of the best games on the PlayStation 4. And yes, The Last of Us took everything Uncharted did and made it grittier and darker and more meaningful. But Uncharted is the turning point. Uncharted is the point where we went from Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, animated platform mascots, cute and cuddly and fun to play, an exhilarating console-defining series that took the evolution into maturity using high-definition graphics and seamlessly integrating all of the things that we look for in a video game. If there is one game to rule them all, it has to be this.
In honour of Generation Pixel's 3-year YouTube anniversary, I humbly offer you the following. One Ball to Rule Them All by Sir Richard Pitchard. Now that Final Fantasy has turned to piss, we can look back and marvel at all we now miss. In the year 2001, when some of you were still sperm, came a game for which my heart still yearns. Tidus or Tidus or Tidus, I still don't know. Or why a massive fish was your biggest foe. Remember Riku? Hot stuff, right? Zing! Well, she was 15, so welcome to the non-swing. Yes, Final Fantasy X was a JRPG through and through. And let's not mention the pile of excrement that was X2. Let's remember Spira, the sky, the sea and the sand, and Auron with his weird little gimp hand. And despite having to faff around confused with a blitzball, I still think that Final Fantasy X is the one game to rule them all.
Hello Internet, it's John Bundy, and I'm here today to wish Generation Pixel a happy 3rd birthday for his channel. And in honour of that, I would like to sing you a little song. Happy birthday, Generation Pixel. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Generation Pixel. Happy birthday to you. And for those who haven't clicked off the video, apologies Stuart on that, then we are going to talk about the game that, in my humble opinion, is the one that beats them all, the greatest game of all time. Now, this isn't what I personally believe is my favourite game of all time, but the one I think is the best game that's ever been made. So, and you know, I immediately went, well, what are my favourite games? So some people I think I might go for things I've talked about in the past, like Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So, yes, these are my original copies when I was a kid. But then, you know, people who grew up with Nintendo will feel that way about, you know, Super Mario World. Okay, then let's go for one of my other favourite games of all time. Half-Life 2. But if you grew up as more of a console gamer rather than a PC player, yes, okay, I know this did also get released for the Xbox and also for 360 and PS3 as part of the Orange Box, but no, it's more known as a PC game. Anyway. So it's not as well known, say, as some other games. So then I went, okay, think about a game that is universally loved, a game that is still played today, and even its original iteration is still played today by people, and it's one that no matter if they are a experienced gamer or not, someone who's just picked up, you know, this game for the first time, that they can play. A game that doesn't matter about demographic. Anyone can play it. And anyone who plays it will have a good time playing it. And to me, that is what makes this game the greatest of all time. And that is Tetris for the Game Boy. One of the first games I ever owned, got with my Game Boy. And yeah, I'm not lying, like, people still play this, and if you play it, like, some of you right now probably have, like, the theme music playing in your head. But it is a game that anyone can pick up and play, and also, you know, if you have 2 Game Boys, you know, do co-op. Like, this is one of the, they bundled it with the Game Boy, but this was like a system seller, you know, because it came with the system. People wanted to play it and use the link cable to play against each other. There was even, what, a couple of years ago, a picture of Chris Evans and Black Widow. I'm struggling to remember her name. I know her name, but it's late and I have a cold. You know, them playing, you know, original Game Boys, playing this over a link cable. It shows, like, how relevant it still is, and people still enjoy playing it. So, there you go. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what other people say is their, you know, the game they feel should be on this list. But for me, it's Tetris. So, enjoy the rest of your child's birthday, Stuart, and I'll catch you all next time.
What's going on, everybody? Jay here from Square Pegs. Congratulations, Stuart, on 3 years on YouTube. That is no small feat. You know, a parent will tell you that it's the terrible 2s that you have to watch out for, but it's the 3s, because the 3s are when they start to know that they can push your buttons. So I'm looking forward to what mayhem you can cause this year, my friend. And the question on everyone's lips today is, what is your one game to rule them all? And mine is probably going to be much like Stuart's, Suikoden 2. I discovered Suikoden 2 About a year after it came out, I found my copy at Toys R Us on clearance for $5, and it was something that I just kind of took a flyer on. I loved JRPGs, and this looked decidedly like a JRPG. I was intrigued by the concept, and they also had the strategy guide, so I picked that up at the same time, and I went home and played it and was immediately addicted to the game. And the series has become my favorite video game series. Suikoden 2, though, is the best of the bunch. Stuart, thank you so much for having me on, for asking me to be here. Congratulations again on 3 years, and I cannot wait to see what's next for you, my friend.
Hey, Jen Pixel, mate. It's Stewie for Stewie's Retro Gaming here. You posed me a wee question asking me what was one of my favourite games. Actually, I think you were asking me what my favourite game of all time is. I have been absolutely losing sleep trying to figure out in my mind what my game is, in my mind, my favourite one. And honestly, I cannot tell you. I really can't. But I can tell you one thing. I've got one here that is an absolute stormer, and one that I absolutely love playing on a specky. And that is this bad boy. Boom. Saboteur. Right, my friend, let's get on this game. It says right away, this music, absolute nostalgia boost to my mind. I absolutely love this. I really hope you like this one. I'm going to try and do a very quick blast through. I'm just going to do it on extremely easy just to get through it. Nice and fast for you. Let's get this done. Ninja! Let's go. And even look at this game, I absolutely love it, man. Produce! Take that dog. Run along here. Should be a gent in here. Wallop. Jump dog. In the wee stairs. Yawn. Do a wee shimmy. Stab that dude. I'll ignore the dog this time. I'll leave him alive. Subway Train 1. Absolutely, honestly, I can't even tell you how many times I played it. I even got it for the Switch as well. That's how addicted to it I really am. So I think it's the only Switch game I've actually got that's a specky game. Just gonna go down this wee stair here. Should I be dug in a bit? Not getting it, sorry. I used to play this all the time. This is me and my auntie used to play it when she was babysitting me, and it was one of those games that was always on. It was always getting played. Is the guy going to shoot me? No, he's not. Punch. Take that. Get. Punch. Take that. Give him a kick in the face. Oh no, sugar. Sorry. And he jumps at this time, but he's not going to be such a fool. Pink, pink. Up ya. And boom. Completed in less than 6 minutes. Thank you very much. Aye. So that is my game choice, my friend. I hope you liked it, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the fellas into contributions as well. Catch you later, pal. Happy gaming.
Happy 60th birthday, Generation Pixel. Or, wait, no, that's the video for later this year, I'm sorry. It's your 3rd anniversary on YouTube! And you asked us to pick some games to rule them all. And I think we have some good ones. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Well, I think you need to go first.
Okay. I have one suggestion and 5 different ways you can play it. So, Resident Evil 4 is a great game. I don't understand why you don't like it. And in the comment section below, for anybody watching this video, give him heck. You can play it on Nintendo, on the GameCube. You can play it on PlayStation 2. You can play it on Xbox One. You can play the new one on PS5, or you can play it on the VR. Deadpool likes it.
Oh! Oh! Canada!
So Scott, what are you picking?
I'm going old school. RPG, survival horror, heavy on the cinematics, something you guys didn't get, but I have a feeling you're gonna get lucky and you're gonna get it soon.
Maybe.
Parasite Eve.
We even have the strategy guides behind us. You can't see it all, but it's back there. And yeah, I think you should play it. I think you should play it soon. It's a great game. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of this video, and we'll throw it back to you.
Now, of all the people I would expect to put on the thumb screws when it came to submitting videos showing me their one game to rule them all, and Scott and Jen over at Retro Rivals wouldn't be the first ones to come to mind. I thought they were decent, loving Canadians, but no. They of course went all out with the pain, and Jen decided that Resident Evil 4 was the greatest game of all time. But is it? No, it's not. Not in the slightest. It's not even a Resident Evil game. You want to play 1, 2, 3 in Code Veronica to get the true Resident Evil experience, and controlling Leon Kennedy in this game is like trying to guide your drunk friend home through a forest at midnight while your significant other is also trying to slow you down. This is not a great Resident Evil game. I'm sorry, Jen, but it's not. And now on to Scott, because Scott has decided to put the thumbscrews on properly, and he decided on Parasite Eve. Now let me tell you about Parasite Eve. It's a game that I would absolutely love to play. It didn't get a PAL release. Sure, we got Parasite Eve 2 over here, but not the first game. Why? Oh, why? But eventually I'll get round to playing it. But at the moment, it's a bone of contention. So let's carry on with some others.
Aaron here from Nerdcrave, and we're here today to talk about our very favorite games. One game to rule them all. And you know what? This is a really hard topic for me to nail down definitively, because over the years I have had so many favorite games, and you know, my tastes change from day to day, and my favorites change from day to day, but there is one game that I do think is my favorite game of all time. There are so many different genres of games, and so many different ways to play games on different systems with different controllers, and it's just absolutely impossible for me to say with all certainty that there is one game to rule them all. Of course, I absolutely love games like Mario 3 on the NES, and Mario World on the Super NES, and fantastic RPGs like Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana, and fantastic racing games like I think my favorite series of all time is probably the Gran Turismo series as a series, and Gran Turismo 6 as my favorite one. I want to talk today about the one game that absolutely will never be overshadowed, and that is Parasite Eve.
Now wait a minute, what is it with Canadians at the moment? I thought they were lovely people, very polite, very caring, but then we get this, Nerdcrave. I mean, Parasite Eve, are you just... were you in contact with Scott and Jen over at Retro Rivals? I wouldn't be surprised if you were after their instalment, but Parasite Eve, why would you pick that? I mean, over there in Canada, you have Nova Scotia, New Scotland. We over here have the Old Alliance with France, and you over there are basically half French. What's the issue? Well, okay, let's just get back to Nerdcrave and hear him talk about a game that I haven't played yet, because it didn't get released over here.
Game that I played in 1998, and I've absolutely never been the same since. I have constantly been looking all the way up to today for another game that would capture that spirit of a JRPG in a modern setting, in a western city, with guns and grenades and bazookas and all kinds of crazy things like that, because most JRPGs, as you know, have magic and swords and things like that, and I just thought this was so cool. Coming off the heels of Final Fantasy VII, you know, which was a super amazing game in and of itself, but so many JRPGs at the time with the swords and the medieval and stuff, and Parasite Eve just absolutely stood out to me as something I had never experienced before. That fusion of a JRPG with a survival horror game a la Final Fantasy VII meets Resident Evil. Very frightening story, really. Because it seems like something that could be plausible within the evolution of the human species, and I think that's what has always grabbed me to this day. I feel like this game is an 11 out of 10, and I will die on that hill. Thanks so much for having me on. I can't wait to watch this video.
If a Konami game on the SNES was in a silver box, you knew you were in for a good time. And Cybernator is the one game to rule them all. Pure anime-inspired robot war nonsense aside, at its heart, Cybernator is all about big sweaty mechs slapping each other about. Mechs, guns, kabooms. And the main music track throughout gets you pumped. The main game has an 8-way control gimmick, which can also be locked in place with a button, really handy. But be warned, this game can be unforgiving, so don't forget the trusty block button. Absolutely essential. If you think you can just rush round all the bullets flying around, think again. Get that block button used, take your time. Chuck in asteroid battles, orbit re-entry, more giant mechs, more anime exposition that you'll never ever need, and upgradable weapons. This is perhaps the greatest SNES game you'll ever find for 12 quid.
Ari, so when Stu turned me into Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice and asked us to pick one game to rule them all, you know, the ultimate game, your mind just goes all over the shop. It's, well, how can I pick that and not pick that? It's like, there's so many great games. Anyone knows me, you know, what my feelings towards the FromSoft games, the Bloodborns, the Dark Souls, the Elden Rings. But then I love The Last of Us, Mass Effect games, Resi games. Silent Hill 2 is definitely my favourite horror game of all time. But then the Resi game, you know, there's just so many. Metal Gear Solid, Bioshock, it's Symphony of the Night, Castlevania. Oh man, it's gonna burst. It is so hard. So what I've decided to do is pick the one game that made me fall in love with games, and then all of the other games kind of obviously just branched off from my love of games. Sonic 2 is another one from my childhood. Okay, so when I was a young lad in the 80s, I'd say this is probably about 88, 89, around about then. My mum and dad had split up. I was 6, 7, something like that. And I'd go to my dad's every Saturday. He'd walk to my mum's to pick us up, and then would get the bus to his. You know, it was Britain in the 80s. Everything was grey and brown, and he didn't have the best jobs, and he could only afford, you know, to get the bus one way. So he wanted to make sure me and my brother we got the bus right, so we didn't have to walk. And he'd pick up. At the time, I had the Amstrad 464, 646. I always get mixed up, 464, I think. And he put that in a black bag with the monitor, all green, like puke green colours. That was all I had. He put that in the bag, and then we'd go to his, and he'd set all that up. But at the time, I think he had just upgraded from the Atari ST to the Amiga, and he got this game. And I remember it wasn't a Saturday actually. It was a Friday night. He used to pick up. And I remember on the Friday night he put this game on, and I just stopped playing my Amstrad, and I was just sat there with my dad, just watching him. And me and him went on this massive adventure. And the game was Dungeon Master. It was films and books and all that. They're great, but for me that night was, you know, it's what video games can do that no other media can do, where you actually feel like you're in that adventure yourself. So it started off with, he let me pick the characters' names. You can choose the 4 characters, and we went off on a massive D&D adventure, fighting mummies together and all sorts of skeletons, just hideous creatures. And I thought my dad was a genius, because there's, like, early in the game there's a puzzle where you have to put a rock on a plate, and it makes the weight to open up the cage. And I was like, oh, my dad's so clever. And obviously, like, I'm moving at the minute, so you can't see the games and stuff like that, but I'm obsessed with video games. I absolutely love them, and to this day I still love just going on that adventure where, you know, I feel like I'm in that world, and no other media can do it. So this is just a very quick video. I've not put much thought behind it, sorry. But yeah, so I'd say Dungeon Master, because it started my love for every other game that exists. Congratulations, Stu, on, was it 3 years? I never really read your text properly, I'm sorry. Here's to another 3.
Let me think. The greatest game in the world. The greatest game ever. What is the greatest game? Well, it's obvious. It's golf for the Atari 2600. The greatest in graphics. The most beautiful in visuals. The orchestral musical beauty and sound effects. The detailed story held within about one man's struggle simply to hit the damn ball! That's actually a square. It doesn't actually look like a ball, it's a square. Imagination. You haven't ever played a sports game like this, and there's a good reason for that. It's because once they made this sports game, they realised they could never top it. They could never make a sports game as good as this one. They could never make an RPG that was as gripping as this one. No game in the world is as good as this one. I'm just messing with you. The best game ever made was Soul Reaver. I don't need to explain myself. It should be obvious why.
3 years on YouTube, can't get rid of him. Here he is, sending me a tea towel. Look at all the beer stains all over it from all the live streams, LOL. One game to rule them all? Yeah. Half-Life. You.
So I thought it was quite fitting to wrap up that segment with Mick over at Heaps of Games, and yes, you will have noticed he was the only contributor that had to be bleeped out. But that's the Irish for you. Anyway, that was some wonderful people, some great friends that I've made over this past 3 years, and not everyone that I've met on YouTube was featured in here. There's tons of you out there that didn't have time to submit a video, which is probably quite good considering the length this one has ended up, and there's so many more besides that that probably didn't even hear that I was putting this together. But that was their one game to rule them all, and what you're here to see is my one game to rule them all. You're waiting to see if I've been able to separate Suikoden 2 from Final Fantasy 7, and the answer is no.
No way. No way.
Yes way! And quite frankly, Suikoden 2 and Final Fantasy 7 are still my favourite game of all time, and probably will remain that way forever. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping there's another game out there that can push them off the top spot, but at the moment I don't see it. But one game to rule them all doesn't need to be the best game. Some of the other contributors that you may have noticed out there had sort of twigged onto that fact, and for me, the one game to rule them all, well, there's been a clue throughout this video, and if you've been paying attention you might have picked up on it, because that game is Space Invaders. And yes, not this copy of Space Invaders here, but the arcade cabinet way back in 1978. I mean 78, I was 5 years old, but I got to experience Space Invaders in 1980 as a 7-year-old and absolutely loved it. I had played other games before that. I had played Pong, well, a Pong clone anyway, at home, and just Space Invaders, what can I say about it? It was just an absolute masterpiece. It exploded onto the arcade scene at the time, and it was the game that I realised that video games were going to be my main hobby for probably ever. And here we are now in 2023, a 50-year-old man, still in love with Space Invaders, still in love with video games. Now, this part of the video is for you if you missed out in sending a contribution, or if you're just a regular viewer who doesn't put out their own videos. Well, drop down into the comments and let me know what is your one game to rule them all, because the interaction between you and me, well, that's what makes YouTube special. It does for me anyway. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And a big thank you to all of those contributors out there, those wonderful people that are now my friends, who have made this video way much longer than I expected it to be, but also way much more fun. Thank you all again, and until next time, cheerio!